Hey, what's up, everybody? Wanted to go live real quick and just give an immediate reaction because Dmitry Bivol just shocked the world. Um, and literally, it just happened a few minutes ago. Dmitry Bivol beats Canelo Alvarez by unanimous decision. Wanted to give some quick, immediate thoughts. I'm not going to go crazy long here because it's 1 a.m. I need to be in bed. I'm preparing for a fight myself this coming Friday, so I gotta get my rest. Anyway, a few quick thoughts. First of all, 115, 113 three times. Absolutely disgusting scorecards. And, look, you guys know I picked Canelo Alvarez by decision to win this fight. And you can see why I did that. I thought that the Vegas judges would give Canelo the benefit of the doubt in any close round and that they would try to steal this fight. And you saw that. There is absolutely no way in hell anybody can give Canelo Alvarez 5 rounds in that fight that we just saw. Okay. I personally scored at 117, 111. I can't remember exactly which rounds I gave to Canelo. Don't quote me, but I think off the top of my head, it might have been the first, third, and ninth rounds, but I can't remember for sure. But I gave him 3 rounds. And I thought that was a fair scorecard. I thought 117, 111 was a good score. At best, at best, if you're bending over backwards, 116, 112. But to all three judges to go 115, 113 just shows you what I was getting at by picking Canelo Alvarez in this fight. I told you guys Dmitry Bivol was a live dog. I told you he had a great chance. Years ago when Dmitry Bivol and I chatted about this fight, Bivol told me he's wanted this fight for years, but he told me he was willing to come down to 168. He's wanted Canelo. He saw something there. He thought he could win this fight. And he went out and boxed beautifully tonight. A couple quick observations. Well, first of all, let me say this. I saw on my Twitter feed some people shitting on Canelo Alvarez and making jokes and saying, oh, he's been feasting on bums and now he's a bum and just saying stuff like that. Listen, let's give Canelo Alvarez props, okay? Because he took a challenge here tonight in fighting Dmitry Bivol that literally 99% of fighters in Canelo's position would not have taken. They would have gone the PBC route and taken the much easier fights against Charlo, Spence, Benavidez. He went after a very tough fighter who didn't have a big fan base, didn't bring a lot of money with him or anything like that. And the biggest reason is because Canelo had a goal of unifying the light heavyweight division, and Bivol had that bargaining chip. He had that belt. So the same reasons that Plant and Smith and Saunders got their fights at 168 with Canelo, it's the same reason Bivol got this fight, right? The thing is with Canelo is he approached this fight, from what I saw, he pretty much fought Bivol the exact same way he fought Smith, Plant, and Saunders. He fought the same way. Bivol is just a level above those guys, right? And some of us knew this. Maybe he didn't realize that. Maybe he took him lightly. I don't know. But to me, it just looked like Canelo kind of showed up and fought the exact same way he's been fighting these other guys. Bivol is such a better fighter than Caleb Plant. He's so much better than Billy Joe Saunders. He's so much better than Callum Smith. He might be better than Beterbiev. He might be, right? We won't know until they fight, but he might be. As I stated this week coming into this fight, Bivol is the second best light heavyweight in the world, no less than the third best, but now, clearly he's the second best. We could see that, if not the best. And Canelo Alvarez took on this challenge. So I think Canelo deserves credit for everybody shitting down his throat right now. I think that's a little unfair and just kind of nasty. Boxing fans could be the worst sometimes because they want fighters, they want the superstars to take on challenges, but then when they do and they come up short, they shit on those fighters. So it just doesn't make sense to me. Both fighters deserve credit, okay? Dmitry Bivol deserves tremendous credit for the way he boxed tonight. And Canelo Alvarez deserves credit for taking the challenge, but he didn't have to. Guys, he could have fought Jermall Charlo, who has never fought at 168, hasn't beat an elite level opponent in their physical prime ever in his career. at least at 160. And it would have been his first fight at 68. I mean, that would have been a much easier fight than tonight, just in terms of styles and experience and all of that. But so both of these guys deserve credit. But real quick with Bivol won this fight because of his footwork. That's what did it. The great thing Bivol did, particularly in the first half of the fight when Canelo would lay on the ropes and try to set traps, Bivol stayed long. He'd get low, he'd fight down to Canelo's height at times, but he'd do it from a distance. He fought at length. He kept his punches straight. He kept his arms out in front of him. After every combination, he got the left hand back up. He kept that high guard. So he saw every punch coming from Canelo. Whether Canelo went upstairs or downstairs, he was winging shots from way outside, right? He was rah, rah, from way outside. Bivol saw it coming and caught it, and mostly caught it with his left arm. But he got caught some of the body shots with his elbows. I mean, Canelo didn't land a clean punch on Bivol's chin the entire night. Some punches got through the guard, right? The high guard, but they only partially got through. Some punches got around the guard, but only partially around it. Some body shots got in, but only partially because it winged off the elbows, kind of slid off the elbows. And the reason why Bivol was able to do that is because he wasn't too close. If he got close to Canelo or allowed Canelo to get close to him, some of those looping shots would have landed on the temple, or underneath those uppercuts could have got underneath the guard and landed on the chin. And that's what Canelo was able to do against Saunders and Smith and Plant, because they're just not as good as Bivol. Bivol's footwork is light years better than those guys. The only guy who comes somewhat close with footwork is Caleb Plant, but Bivol's is much, much better. And Bivol has much better power as well, and just a better overall defense than Caleb Plant. And it faced such better opposition to prepare him for this, even though it was several years ago. And I think it's clear right now that Bivol over the last few years was playing possum a little bit. And instead of, a lot of people were like, why doesn't he dump the WBA belt and move down to 168 and challenge Canelo there? Well, the bargaining chip he had was that WBA light heavyweight title. So smart play by Dmitry Bivol, making a promotional agreement with Matchroom and holding on to that light heavyweight title and staying in the ring, doing what he's got to do, and maybe fighting down to the level of his opposition a little bit, playing possum a little bit to entice Canelo to take the fight. Awesome job. And you could see tonight that he was supremely confident, fought brilliantly. Also, another thing, he didn't fold. Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, those guys folded. When the going got tough, they started to break a little bit. And Canelo tried to do that to Bivol. He couldn't do it. He couldn't break him. And I think I noticed frustration in Canelo 4th, 5th round because he did a tactic that he did against Golovkin a lot, where he just kind of went on the ropes and just said, hey, come get me, and tried to be cute with the defense and move around and all that and try to land one big counter punch. That's all he needs to do in Vegas to take a round, right? So it's almost slightly like the Floyd thing, just a little bit different style-wise, but the same principle of it. And Golovkin fell forward a few times and went in there and kind of obliged Canelo in those moments. But in this fight, Bivol didn't. Bivol would stay on the outside, boom, 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 land a combination, throw 5 or 6 punches, maybe only 1 or 2 of them get through, but then he'd stay at range and just kind of stand there like, nah, I'm not coming in. You come out. And eventually Canelo would come out back to the center of the ring. And they just repeated this. And by the second half of the fight, Bivol was walking Canelo down. I thought Canelo had a better 9th round. I remember scoring that round to him because you could argue Bivol still won it, but I gave that one to Canelo. Bivol appeared to take it off, didn't throw much, but he came right back in the 10th round, reestablished his dominance. The only mistake I think Bivol made, if he would have went to the body, guys, he would have stopped Canelo tonight. Canelo was winded in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, even in the 8th, before he had that resurgence in the 9th. I thought that if Bivol followed up the end of his flurries, right, where you boom, 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 kind of slap, 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 and just downstairs, boom, boom, hard, slap, 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 step to the side, boom, right? If he would have ended those flurries and capped him off with hard body punches, I'm talking where he turns into it, he could have stopped Canelo. You're not going to stop Canelo with headshots. You're not. You're just not. But he could have stopped him to the body. I really, really feel that way. Bivol, stuck a jab down there and touched him down there just to get him to think about it, but he never went hard to the body. And I think there is apparently a rematch clause. Canelo says he wants to do the rematch. There's that 2-fight deal with DAZN. I think now the Golovkin fight's scrapped, not happening. So a lot of you guys out there are going to be happy about that. Golovkin is hating life right now. But if we do get a rematch between these two, I think in the rematch, Bivol should concentrate on going down to the body hard a few times when he's got Canelo backed up and he's got his hands up and he's got his hands wide, kind of squared up on the ropes, and he's doing his little cute thing with the head movement. Touch him upstairs, bam, hard to the body. He can maybe get something done. For Canelo, he's got to realize this ain't Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, Avni Yildirim. It's not. This is a fighter that really, in terms of skill, is an elite level guy who could be on a pound for pound. Well, now he's got to be on the pound for pound list, right? So that's the level of guy that you're fighting. And you're going to have to make adjustments. You can't just do the same thing over and over and over. That works against Caleb Plant. That works against Jermall Charlo. That probably works against David Benavidez. Not going to work against this guy. So Canelo's got to make a lot of adjustments. I will say this. If Canelo can actually come back and do better in the rematch and even win the rematch, that would be huge. That would be massive. That would be something that would be that would really, truly make him an all-time great, But if I got to be honest, guys, if I'm Canelo and I'm the Reynosos, I don't take this rematch. I go back down to 168 and I defend my undisputed super middleweight championship and say, yeah, 175 was a little too much for us. And I fight John Ryder, and then I do the deal with Jermall Charlo, Demetrius Andre. I fight those guys because they're going to be much, much easier than Dmitry Bivol. So that's what I would do if I were Canelo. And if PBC, they're not going to offer you $100 million anymore for those fights. You're not going to get quite as much, but you're still Canelo Alvarez. You're still the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. So you're still going to get substantial, payouts and purses for those kinds of fights. That's what I would do. But yeah, Dmitry Bivol really, really screwed up the party tonight, didn't he? I love it. I love a good upset. Super chat from Bang Mateo. Thank you so much, man. He said Canelo was episodic tonight, Mike. No stamina also. Yeah, look, Canelo's always had stamina issues. Here's what I saw. Every single punch, and Dmitry Bivol actually talked about this in the interview. By the way, I thought Bivol did fantastic in the interview. There was a little xenophobia tonight. I'm not going to get political, but there was a little xenophobia that made me feel a little uncomfortable going into this fight, that I just didn't feel right, and it wasn't cool, and Bivol didn't deserve it. He handled all of it beautifully with class. Post-fight interview is outstanding. Some of the fans were booing him. Those people are douchebags and they're pieces of shit. But I think he won over most of the fans there, and they started cheering and clapping when he gave props to the Mexican fans there and everything. So he handled everything well. But anyway, he talked about the fact, Bivol did, that Canelo only threw hard punches, which takes me back to my original point for some of you just joining on the chat here. Canelo fought this fight the exact same way he fought Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith. The only thing is he was fighting a much, much, much better fighter tonight. Much better fighter. So you can't go out and fight the same way. You're going to have to make adjustments. You're going to have to game plan. You're going to have a plan B, C, and D. And Canelo didn't seem to have that tonight. He went out, did the same thing he did against those other guys I mentioned at 168. I've been telling you guys that was a weak division. And some people were giving me hell for saying that. Some people, oh, you're just a hater. You're hating on Caleb Plant because he's a PBC guy. But it has nothing to do with that. I'm just telling you the truth. Those weren't really, really tough wins for Canelo. All he did in those fights pretty much is move forward, move his head, and wing shots at those guys. And eventually he caught them. That's all he really did. Now, his head movement was great. His defense was great. He was explosive with his punches. That ain't going to work against Bivol. It just ain't going to work. Um, to Bivol's credit, I have to say this again, because some of you guys I see now, a bunch of you just got on the chat. Bivol used his length beautifully, and he stayed long. The mistakes that Plant, Smith, Saunders, and Golovkin made. Golovkin had to get inside. Let me take Golovkin out of this. Those other guys, they did not use their length. They didn't stay long. They not only got down to Canelo's level height-wise, but they got inside with him, or they let Canelo get inside on them. And that's how Canelo was able to wing those shots over the top. And when their guard came up, then he was able to get those uppercuts underneath. And that was all she wrote. And Saunders, when Saunders got knocked out, right? He didn't just let Canelo inside. He didn't just stay close to Canelo. He bent down. He gave up his height and crouched into the uppercut. That's why I took his orbital bone out. Plant, when he was up on the ropes, moved over to his right into the shot, right? They were in range, and they gave up their height. They gave up their length, and that's how Canelo was able to connect. With Bivol, kept the high guard, kept his head upright. It's not like he was using a ton of head movement. That's not what Bivol does. He blocks punches with the high guard, but he also uses his feet to get out of range. And so when Canelo was winging those punches, he was having to extend so far and having to wind up, because every punch he was trying to score a home run shot, right? Winging shots from way out here. Bivol sees that coming. And with the high guard, with his length, caught it, right? And then up on the ropes, he just stayed tight. Didn't crouch down like this, didn't crouch over, give and move into Canelo shots. If you got a little guy on you throwing uppercuts, the worst fucking thing you could do is do this, do that, right? All those mistakes the super middleweights made. Bivol just stayed here. Go ahead and throw an uppercut, dude. You might get a little bit through. It might glance through, but you're going to hit gloves. Go ahead and wing a shot over here. You're going to hit gloves. Yeah, a little bit might get through. Okay. That's all he did when he got on the ropes. And then he bounced off the ropes, get back to the center of the ring. Every time Canelo winded up to throw a big shot, Bivol just bounced back. And then Canelo would throw a shot. They bounce back in with a quick 1-2. That's all he did. Or boom, 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 just a quick little jab. He did that all night, and it worked. And then eventually Canelo got tired, because if you keep missing punches and every punch you're throwing is a knockout punch, you're going to get tired, especially when you're getting hit back. So I just thought a fantastic performance by Bivol. He won this fight with his feet. He stayed disciplined. He didn't let the crowd get to him. He didn't let some of the animosity and xenophobia he was facing get to him. He kept the politics out of it. He just stayed focused. And footwork, defense, and sticking to the straight 1-2 down the middle, and length. Just a textbook performance on how a tall guy should fight a shorter guy. That's if you're going to show anybody, any kid coming up in the amateurs, if it's a tall, long kid, hey, this is how you fight a shorter guy who's more explosive than you. This is how you do it. That's what Bivol did tonight. I still think he could do better. He could have went to the body when Canelo opened up on the ropes a little bit and backed off and kind of squared up and had his guard high. Bivol could have ended his flurries and his combinations with hard body punches. I think he may have even stopped Canelo had he done that. So there's things that Bivol can do better in the rematch, believe it or not. For Canelo, there's a lot he could do better in the rematch. For starters, don't treat this guy like he's Caleb Plant, because he's not. Bivol would beat the brakes off of Caleb Plant and every other fighter at 168. Bet, okay? He might be the best at 175. He might beat the brakes off Beterbiev if they were to fight. So Canelo can't approach this guy the way he approached them. Those were second-tier level fighters. Not to diss them, but that's the reality. Bivol's proven himself to be top tier. The guy that we saw in 2018, 2019, who fought Pascal, Chilemba, Smith, I'm forgetting somebody else, went on that great 4-fight run. That's who Bivol was. Now, he's kind of fallen under the radar the last few years. I think he was kind of doing what he felt he had to do, staying quiet, playing possum a little bit to get the big fight. It just seems like that's what he was doing. And he kind of fought down to the level of his opposition. He didn't look as good, but it turns out there was more to him than we had seen before. And he has the levels. He has all of it. And it's just a fantastic performance, man. He put it all together. By the way, yes, I picked Canelo Alvarez by decision. That does not take away from the fact that I always thought Dmitry Bivol was a world-class fighter. And years ago, when he was going on that 4-fight run, the first time Bivol told me he wanted that Canelo fight, I remember saying, you know, if there was anyone that was really going to give Canelo a run for the money up at like 168, 175, that's the guy. But over the last few years, he had not looked as good, you know, everything I just talked about. And then the Vegas part made me question it. And that's why I went with Canelo by decision. By the way, Canelo almost won this fight. That's how bad Las Vegas is. Why do we keep going back to Las Vegas? Why? I don't understand this. Had Canelo turned it up in one round, let's just say, turned it up in one round and went out there, pick a round, I don't know, the 6th round, it went out there and won it, this fight would have been a draw, guys. Does this feel like it would have been a draw? If Canelo won one more round? That's not the fight I saw. I saw 117, 111 for Bivol. So the fact that it was 115, 113 3 times tells you they were trying to fuck this guy. They were trying to rob him. This was going to be another controversial, questionable decision. But props to Bivol for winning so clearly and so convincingly that they couldn't rob him, even though they tried. Super chat from Aaron. Thank you so much, brother. He says, Mike, I told you Bivol was the goods. Also canceled my subscription after they saw fit to erase his heritage and nationality. Indio, California, get the F out of here. Yeah, that's, again, I'm not going to get political, but they listed him as being from Indio, California. The national anthem thing was interesting. I understand some of the choices. I thought some of the other choices were, quite frankly, I didn't agree with them. I'll just leave it at that. So for Bivol facing all of that, and then facing the establishment Vegas judges, facing the #1 pound-for-pound guy in the world, and winning so clearly and decisively that they couldn't rob him, even though they tried their best. That's pretty amazing. It's just a fantastic performance. I'm going to check my email real quick because I want to see if CompuBox has sent over the... Oh, they have sent the punch numbers. Let's check this out, shall we? I know you guys love punch numbers, so let me share my screen here. Let's pull this up. Let's have a look-see. All right. So first thing that jumps out to me is that Dmitry Bivol landed double digits in all but one round. The 10th round was a very slow round for both fighters. But Canelo landed single digits in all but 2 rounds. So in terms of punches landed, this was pretty much a whitewash. Bivol landed 152 punches, 21%. Alvarez landed 84 at 17%. So Bivol threw more, landed more, was more accurate. He landed more jabs. He threw more jabs and more than doubled Canelo's accuracy. Power punches. Bivol threw more, landed more, and more accurately. So in every single punching category, except for body punching, Dmitry Bivol clearly out-punched, out-landed Canelo Alvarez and did it more accurately. So how do you just look? And again, you don't score fights with punch numbers, all right? But I mean, you can make a case that Canelo Alvarez didn't win a round until shit, I don't know. I'm trying to think which one of these rounds is close. The 3rd and 4th round were close. So you could have gave him one of those rounds. And then not again until the 9th, 10th, 11th, somewhere in there, you might have gave him another round or 2. But I don't know how you give him more than about 3 rounds in this fight. I just don't. Isan with the super chat. Thank you so much, Isan. He's like, I got Bivol at plus 700. Now, some of you guys made some cash tonight. There's some happy people in Vegas tonight that bet this fight and made some cash. Sam A with the super chat. Thank you. He said, just hit them for $3 grand. Canelo is like fighting Tyson. If you can avoid the bombs and jab his face up, he is neutralized. Yeah, if you can avoid the bombs and jab his face up, he is neutralized. Yeah, that's kind of what this was. This was kind of like Canelo trying to bully this guy, and it had worked against lesser fighters. Wasn't going to work against Bivol. And, you know, he couldn't bully Golovkin, but they were the same size. In fact, Canelo's naturally stronger and actually bigger, just a bigger guy, seriously, in terms of natural strength and power than Golovkin is. Golovkin's not a big middleweight. And by the way, the broadcast kept saying that Bivol's a true light heavyweight and a big light heavyweight. No, he's not. He could make 168 right now if he really wanted to. He's nowhere near as big as Joe Smith and Artur Beterbiev. He's just not. The zone broadcast sometimes. Ugh. By the way, this was a pay-per-view, and there were commercials throughout. If I'm paying $60 for a pay-per-view, why the fuck am I watching commercials throughout a fucking fight? That was really annoying. Yeah, to pay $60 and still have to watch commercials, that was really annoying. Ray Valero with the super chat. Thank you, Ray. He said, great night of boxing, Mike. Thank God the right guy won, even though the scorecards were a bit weird. Peeps in the chat, don't forget to like the video. I appreciate it, brother. And yeah, man, those scorecards, just absolutely awful. Absolutely awful. So to reiterate, because a bunch of you guys just jumped on, Bivol won this fight with his footwork and by staying long. He did not get baited into getting into the a dogfight on the ropes, which is what Canelo wanted. He stayed, even when he backed Canelo on the ropes and would touch him, he'd stay long. Every punch fully extended. He hardly threw anything on the inside, hardly ever. Stayed long, used his feet to stay out of range, and that's why he saw every punch coming at him and was able to catch him. Didn't try to slip, didn't try to get under shots or around shots, just caught him. Why? Why get cute when you could just catch the punch and counter? That's all he did. It was smart boxing. Smart boxing. It's how a tall guy should fight a short guy. Canelo went in there with to me, it appears like went in there with the exact same game plan and mentality and tried to fight Bivol the exact same way he fought Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders, which was an absolute mistake. And I got to say, with the Reynosos, they've gotten a lot of love in recent years. At Ring Magazine, we've given the Eddie Reynoso Trainer of the Year, I think twice in recent years. Hasn't had a good run lately. You know, and look, I don't blame Shakur Stevenson beating Oscar Valdez. Shakur Stevenson is just a better fighter, top to bottom. So but in this fight, there just seemed to be a lack of game plan and focus for Canelo. There just wasn't, I didn't see a plan B. Did they study this guy? Did they look at film? Or did they just think they were going to come in here and just beat the guy? I don't know. I just thought that Joel Diaz over in Bivol's corner did a fantastic job. I thought he outcoached Eddie Reynoso. I thought that Bivol's game plan and focus and dedication to that game plan and discipline to stay with it was better than Canelo from the start. I don't know how anyone else could say otherwise. Chuck Hook with a good question. He asked, Mike, how did Canelo get so tired? Well, it's easy. When every punch that you're throwing is a home run shot and you're trying to knock the guy out with every punch, but he catches every punch and slaps you 3 or 4 times in return, you're going to get tired. And that's what kept happening. With Canelo, there was no setup. There was no jabbing his way in and you know, just touching, then bam! It was just from the outside. It was just these winging shots from the outside. And the crowd loved it. Right? Anytime a shot just barely grazed past the gloves and touched a little bit of Bivol's head, the crowd loved it. And some of the DAZN commentary, oh, Canelo lands another big punch. Whoa, whoa. He really didn't. He didn't snap Bivol's head back once. There wasn't one shot that landed directly on the chin or the temple for that matter. Not one. And that's because he was winging everything from the outside and he wasn't setting it up. And it was all, you know, full power, full blast. That's going to make you tired, man. That's going to make you real tired if those shots ain't landing. So it was just a terrible game plan. I don't know what they thought. But, yeah, I'm trying to think of what else I may have missed that I wanted to hit on. I showed you guys the punch numbers. I talked about the fact that the scorecards were absolute dog shit, and it proves that they were trying to rob this guy. They were trying to butt fuck him, no Vaseline. And it's why I picked Canelo by decision. It's not that I thought that I didn't believe Bivol had a really good chance. I've been saying it all along. He was a very live dog, but I truly, truly thought he'd have to win 8, 9 rounds to get a draw. That's kind of what we almost saw tonight, So my prediction kind of came true in a way. But yeah, dude, look, for a few of you guys who did call it, look, call in the TNC Monday. We'll chop it up. But listen, one last time before I jump off, to shit all over Canelo right now, which I do see some fans doing, and to just bail on the guy and pretend that he's nothing, I think that's really, really messed up. This guy took on a challenge that 99% of fighters in his place would not have taken on. I could name names. I could go back to the previous pound for pound superstars of the sport of previous generations. I'm not even going to go there. But you guys know they did not take challenges like this. They just didn't, right? So for Canelo to take on a challenge like this and come up short, okay, he came up short. It happens when you challenge yourself sometimes. So I do think Canelo Alvarez deserves a certain amount of credit for getting in there and fighting a guy that no one else wanted to fight, not even in his own damn division. It's not like people are lining up at 175 to fight Bivol. It's not like he's some huge brand that brings in a lot of money. There are people that are on Twitter this week trying to say that Canelo ducked Errol Spence and Jermall Charlo to fight Dmitry Bivol. Those people are fucking morons. Okay. Do any of you think that Jermall Charlo or David Benavidez, those guys would beat Dmitry Bivol based on what you saw tonight? Do any of you really think that? Canelo really did dare to be great. This was not Mikey Garcia ducking Lomachenko and fighting Errol Spence, a business transaction to build up Spence's name, and Heyman hooked him up with some ducats under the table. That's not what this was. This was Canelo really, really having a goal of trying to unify 175 pounds. And it's starting with Bivol. But, he just bit off more than he could chew. And again, if I'm Canelo, I'm not taking that rematch. I'm going back down to 168 and defending my undisputed super middleweight championship against the likes of Jermall Charlo, David Benavidez, Demetrius Andrade, those types of guys that Canelo will beat. Benavidez is probably the toughest challenge for him there, but I still think Canelo might beat him, probably beats him. But I think he definitely beats Charlo, definitely beats Andrade, and he can make a lot of money in those fights. So that's what I would do. Super chat from Sam. He says, if Bivol got robbed, RIP boxing. Yeah, no shit. Look, nothing will kill boxing. Nothing will save it. A great man once said that. But if Bivol got robbed, I mean, listen, Canelo has had questionable decisions. Floyd Mayweather shut him out 12 rounds to 0. And one judge had that shit a draw, right? Gennady Golovkin won 8 rounds against him in their first fight. And that was one judge scored that Adelaide Bird, I think, had a 118, 110. I remember, right? She gave Golovkin 2 rounds. He won 8 rounds in that fight. There have been some questionable decisions for Canelo. It is clear that it's tough to beat that dude in Vegas. But this was so decisive. So decisive. More decisive than Golovkin's win. It was. And you could argue more decisive than Mayweather's win, if we're being honest. Which brings me to another point, and this is going to really piss some of you out there off. Floyd Mayweather gets credit as being the first man to beat Canelo Alvarez, and the only man other than Dmitry Bivol to beat Canelo Alvarez. Truth is, he beat a 23-year-old Canelo Alvarez who is not yet in his prime, not yet anywhere near the level of craft and experience and skill that he has right now, and just experience. Also at 152, he pieced him up. He clearly won, but he didn't beat him up and back him up like he did, like Bivol just did. Bivol beat a prime Canelo Alvarez who unified belts at 154, won the legitimate championship at 160 when he beat Golovkin in their rematch, won the undisputed super middleweight championship and came into this fight rated as the undisputed pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the sport in his physical, mental, emotional, and athletic prime. And Bivol beat that version of Canelo more decisively than Gennady Golovkin did at 160 and Floyd Mayweather did at 152. That's the truth. It's going to bother some of you, but that's the truth. Super chat from Mickey D. Doesn't say anything, just has a super chat. Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. It's going on 2 a.m. here for me. I got to get to bed because I have a fight Friday and I need to be getting my rest. Tomorrow is my rest day. And actually, what did I say? Tomorrow. Today is my rest day. I'm supposed to be resting. I'm all pumped up right now. I had to do this quick video. Anyway, guys, Monday, TNC. Make sure that you check it out because it's going to be fun. You know, I'm going to have a full day to process all this information, and so will you guys. And we'll chop it all up 5 o'clock Eastern time on the Ring Magazine's YouTube channel. And I'm sure we're going to have some fun calls. And there's going to be several of you that are going to call in and gloat because some of you guys called it. And you had the balls to say it publicly. So props to you guys who called it. All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And I will see you Monday on the Neutral Corner. Peace.